sewing friends, welcome to my sewing room. My name is Beth, and if you're new, welcome. Behind me today I have a quilt that I've been working on. Let's get started. In a recent video I began making some of these butterfly blocks using this old fabric that had already been cut. I'll leave a link below on how I put the butterflies together, and I've had a couple of weeks to work on them. My mom was visiting, so we were doing some traveling. She was visiting some friends, and I was able to work on all of my butterfly blocks, and I ended up with 30 of these blocks. Now that they are appliqued onto that background square, I'm going to be adding the body and antenna with this tiny rickrack. And I have a couple of packages here in my sewing room that are really old. One package was 15 cents and the other was 25 cents, and that gives you kind of a little bit of a clue how old these packages are. I cut my pieces of rickrack about 7 inches long, and then I folded them in half, and that formed the body and the antenna for my butterfly. And then I simply stitched right on top of the rickrack. I used some dark thread, and I was worried I would run out of the black rickrack, so I used some blue rickrack as well. So I have a little bit of black, sort of half and half black, and half of the rickrack will be blue on half of the blocks. These butterfly blocks are placed on point, and I have 5 butterflies across and 6 down. For the alternate square, I wanted something really simple that didn't detract from all the busyness of those butterflies, and I'm going to use the cotton fabric that came along with these butterflies. It was just the perfect fabric to accompany them, and so I cut my squares 8.5 inches, the same as the butterfly squares, and I'm going to place them all around, and then I'll work on the outside triangles. When adding the triangles to the outside of my quilt, I like to have the bias edge on the inside and not on the outer edge. So I cut a large square, it's 13.5 inches, and I wanted it to be bigger than I needed. And so all of those raw edges will be on the inside attached to the quilt, and I'll place them around, and I'll begin sewing this quilt top together in diagonal rows, and I'm going to leave the 4 corners empty for right now. When my quilt top was all together, except for those 4 corners, I figured out that I would need to cut squares, 8.5 inch squares in half. So I'll need 2 8.5 inch squares. I just wanted to double check the size, and if these squares were a little bigger than I needed, that would be not a problem, because I could just trim the corner and straighten up that edge. So I kind of like having extra fabric at each of those points on the sides of the quilt. Sometimes when you read a quilt pattern and it puts in these triangles on the sides of the quilt, it only gives you 1/4 of an inch. It wants you to end right there at the 1/4 inch mark next to the point of the butterfly square. I hope I'm making myself clear, but I always like to give myself a little more room, and so as you can see here, I'm just trimming just a tiny bit to straighten that corner triangle to match up with the sides of my quilt. And since those side triangles are a little bit bigger where they come together, I needed to trim away a little bit of the excess behind, so I went around and did that. And now my quilt top is ready, and all of the sides of this quilt top are on the straight of the grain, so I don't have to worry about it stretching out as I wait to complete this quilt top and turn it into a quilt. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.